evening. Good evening, brothers and sisters. To see you all again, only virtually. Um, okay, so the topic that was asked of me to discuss with you has to do with the action group. So what I'd like to do is actually share with you some thoughts first about not so much the action group, but just a small group in particular. See, last January, at your first chapter teaching night of the year, you remember I spoke to you about the meaning of brotherhood and or community, uh, about being community with one another. So we discussed why community is part of God's plan for his people. Basically, it's a command that we should be in community, really, that Christian brotherhood is a personal and family relationship born out of love, that BCBP is not simply an institutional organization, but an organism with living parts, an organism joined together by personal and family-like relationships. But as you all know, BCBP is itself a very huge organization, spread all over the world. And even there in Cebu, the BCBP has already so many chapters. And one chapter can go as many as 100 people. So given its size, a member can get lost and even feel all alone in the crowd. So you can come to a breakfast or a prayer meeting or even a national anniversary gathering and really feel lost. So during times like that, then the term brother or sister becomes meaningless jargon and it falls flat. You then wonder, where is the community here? Where is the brotherhood here? Might as well be part of the JCs or whatever other organization. And so this is where the BCBP Action Group comes in. My presentation will center around the small group and why this is such an important feature of BCBP life and culture. So let me talk about the BCBP Action Group in particular. You're familiar with the term, no? By the way, just a little trivia. I was the one who came up with the term action group originally. This was a time, you remember, you were founded in 1980. So was Christ Youth in Action then, 1980 yan. Kasabay ng Couples for Christ, 1980 rin sila ng kinatag. And I was one of the leaders of CYA at that time. It had no name. But when we started CYA, we wanted to have small groups, no? So then we said, oh, how do we call the small groups? At that time, there were many names available. Some people called themselves cell groups. Meron pa akong nakitang term, love cells, ang tawag nila. So I decided that why don't we use the term action group, coming from the word Christ Youth in Action. And I'll share with you later on why it's a very appropriate term for a small grouping. But the small group is one distinctive feature of our community life, whether it's BCBP or Ligaya or Couples for Christ or Lingkod or CY or any other similar community like ours. And that's one important feature, the small group. We call them by various names, as I said earlier. Action group, sharing group, men's and women's groups, fraternal group, love cells, caring groups, whatever. But whatever the name, these groups function and serve similar purposes. So we are a community of disciples on mission in BCBP, whatever our community name is. We are disciples who decided to give our lives to the Lord, to follow him, but to do so together as a people, as a group of disciples together. In order to achieve this, we also decided to be disciples, together as and in community, a brotherhood together. And together as a community, we pursue not only a common call and a common mission, but also a common way of life. So given this call, brothers and sisters, and given the exigencies and the new realities of today's modern life, we believe that we can most effectively pursue this in and through the small groupings that we are all a part of. We have commitments in our respective communities, and these commitments are all a response to both God's goodness and to his personal call to me or to us individually. You find that actually in your commitment card. If you're familiar with that, or if you're, if you have one, I'm sure you have one. You're supposed to have one when you make a commitment to BCBP. We are expected to live out those commitments for the sake of God and for the sake of our brothers and sisters in BCBP. And the place where we are helped to do this is in the small group or the BCBP action group, where cura personalis is exercised. Cura personalis, that's a Latin term, but basically it simply means personal care. You're familiar with the word cura? Cura, like cura parroco, or the parish pastoral care. So when we talk of cura personal, we're talking about personal care. And that's where the small group comes in. So the small group is where cura personalis is exercised. Okay, so the BCBP Action Group is the basic pastoral unit of the BCBP, the community life of the BCBP. It is the place where community members are sustained and supported in their Christian life. But the BCBP is a base from which members are able to launch into effective apostolic action or missionary service. Kaya nga tinawag na action group yan. So hindi lang ito caring group. This is not just inward looking. It is also outward looking. In other words, the action group becomes a base for effective apostolic action, apostolic work, service, in other words. So the basic definition, what is an action group? The action group is a small grouping of maybe about 4 to 5 couples or 10 individuals that meet regularly, maybe weekly. I think in your case, it's twice a month for support in the Christian life and in carrying out the mission of the community. So in terms of features, it's gender-based. If you go, for example, in Lingkod, you have an action group for the men, you have an action group for women, and so on. And it's regular. In other words, it meets regularly. It's led by an action group leader. And the attendance in these meetings or in this group is not optional. In fact, it is part and parcel of the BCBP commitments. So there are 2 basic goals of the action group. First, to build an environment of committed personal relationships for the support of and formation of the members in the Christian life as well as in the BCBP way of life or the BCBP culture. So the action group is supposed to build an environment for members where they can grow in their Christian life, their understanding, the formation of the BCBP way of life. But the second goal is also important. It is to provide a means or a base for apostolic action, as I mentioned earlier, among the members. So where people can serve, people can evangelize, people can do mission work, and so on. So kumbaga, brothers and sisters, this is the place where you go back to and draw strength so you can do service outside or even inside the BCBP. Let me now talk about the characteristics of an action group. It is in the action group that a community member experiences most concretely the love and support and care of brothers and sisters. So very concrete yan. This is where he can experience what it means to be a brother or to be a sister in the community. And so here, brotherly love is not abstract or simply a concept, but it is something that is lived out. This is or experience. This is because the personal relationships are real and they are concrete, expressed in the care and love of the members of that group. So because of that, brothers and sisters, the action group works out best when the following elements and characteristics are present or are working well. So I'll give you some 4 or 5 what I call characteristics of an action group. And if these are working well, then you have a good action group. Next slide, please. Okay, the first one, faithfulness. The members of an action group are expected to put a high priority to attendance in the meetings, knowing that their presence in those meetings, presence to each other, are a source of strength and encouragement for others. Notice that if one is absent or many are absent, nakaka-discourage. Diba? It's even depressing. Ba, walang umaattend, ako lang umattend. So nakakawalang gana. But if people are there and people are present, then it's a source of strength. It's a source of encouragement for each one of us. Faithful presence provides stability to the group. In other words, if people are faithful, then I can sense that I can rely on them. I can count on my brothers and sisters in the group. You know, when someone is absent, brothers and sisters, he is missed. And the body is not complete. I mean, literally. Diba, what do they say? We are the body of Christ. Think about the body like your body, your physical body. Imagine mo kung wala kang daliri, or you're missing a hand. Something is not only missing, you're incomplete. Or 2 hands are not there or are missing, then you are not complete. In the same way, brothers and sisters, when 1 or 2 members are not present, the body is not complete. And those parts are missed out or are missing, and they are missed. So that means that the members are not only committed or should be committed to being present, but they also have some personal order in their lives, in their sense of schedule, the way they carry on with their priorities and so on, so they can be dependable. So presence in the meetings is one of the most clear indicators of faithfulness. So this is very key. In fact, that's why I put this as number 1, faithfulness to the meetings. And it's not, I don't know, brothers and sisters, it's not an option. It is part of who we are as BCBP. Kung hindi ka umaattend ng meetings, hindi ka BCBP, parang ganon. I don't know if you're familiar with the criteria for what it means to be a BCBP member. And one of them is attendance or being part of an action group. Second characteristic, mutual responsibility and accountability. The responsibility for the common and individual life of the members does not simply depend on the leader. Rather, that responsibility is shared by all members of the group. So it's not only the action group leader who takes responsibility for the life of the people in the group. He's not the only one accountable for the life of the group, but instead, each member takes a personal concern for the other members of the group. Each member has some significant responsibility, even knowledge of the other members' concerns, their situations, their personal information, challenges, work issues, everything about the life of the brothers and sisters. So yun, alam mo kung sino may sakit, alam mo kung yung anak niya pumasa sa board, yung mga ganyan. Those are things that are just expected, normal in an action group. Do you know the names of their children? You know their birthdays and anniversaries and stuff like that. So members, pag sinabi may mutual responsibility, members actually arrive at common agreements and decisions that affect their life in the community. Each member is accountable to the decisions made in common by the group. So for example, we together, say the five of us together will decide that we will start our meeting at 8 o'clock every Tuesday. Then each one of us, hindi lang leader nagpa-follow up. Tayo mismo, the members, should be the one reminding each one and things like that. So we're accountable to the decisions that together we actually made. So the decisions are not made only by the leader, it's all of us together, agreeing together to do this or to do that. Third, confidentiality. So this is very important, brothers and sisters. What is shared in the group is kept within the group. You don't share this even with your wives or your husbands. Members protect each other's reputation by not gossiping or indiscriminately sharing personal information without permission. So yun. Just imagine this, brothers and sisters. Nag-share ka na, you know, na you have a problem with your in-laws. Kunwari lang, no? Ganon. So and then what happens is during the prayer meeting of the chapter prayer meeting, you know, somebody in your action group, out of his concern, out of his love for you, blurts out and say during the intercession time, say, brothers and sisters, let's pray for our brothers so and so and our sisters so and so because they're having difficulties with their in-laws. And so, no, let's pray that the Lord will work this thing out, etc., etc. I mean, well-meaning, good intention, but then people will say, I mean, the members who share that confidentially in your group will say, well, how did that come out? You know, who's parang ganyan. So, naibulalas na sa buong grupo na may problema sila sa in-laws nila. So, kahit na well-meaning naman yung brother o yung sister na kasi pinipray nga eh. Pero yung mga ganon. So we'll be careful about those kinds of things because trust is established when confidentiality is kept. The moment you break the confidentiality, you destroy that, then the moment there's a breach in confidentiality, trust is destroyed. So confidentiality is not about keeping secrets. Rather, it is keeping and not passing on information when one does not have the pastoral responsibility over it. This is to protect each other's personal reputation. This is very important, brothers and sisters, because we have to remember that your reputation is an extension of your life. If you damage that reputation, something about your life is also damaged. And let me just make it a very clear example. Nangutang ka, you borrowed money, okay? And then you were not able to pay your debt, yung loan mo. So somebody says, oy, si Francis, hindi nakakapagbayad ng utang. Now, that may be true. Factually, it may be true. But when somebody hears that, what does it do? It puts a question mark on the capability of this brother or on his reputation. And once that reputation is tarnished, his ability to live life within society, his ability to borrow money or to do business, etc., is affected negatively. So we have to be very careful about that. That's the reason why what's going on right now in the social media, the moment somebody says something, and it's all over the social media, sira na ang reputation mo. Sabihin natin kahit na totoo, but then hirap ka na, di ba? Mahirap na. It's not easy for you to live anymore in society. So, yon. And this is something to do with speech. No, we took this up the last time I gave a presentation to you. Okay. Next one, openness and living in the light. Now, sharing of life is open and not defensive. Now, this, however, I recognize is a function of conversion and the experience of the trustworthiness of one another. Obviously, I cannot be open to all of us at the start of our action group kasi hindi ko pa kayo kilala. So, openness becomes a function of the growth in our relationships together. The more we are together, the longer we've been together, the more you will notice that the more you're open about your life. Another reason or another factor is the fact that if I can trust this person, then I'm more open to that. But if I perceive that I cannot trust this person, that's not easy to be open. So openness means that members are not threatened or fearful about sharing their lives, but are honest because they do not experience being judged or being condemned. Rather, they experience being for one another. Nakakampi sila sa grupo. So this means living without deception or false pretenses, not hiding our faults and weaknesses, but being open to one another about what's happening in our lives. Tawag natin dito, living in the light. It's easier to live in darkness. Kasi that's where Satan can really work, in darkness. But once it's open, Satan cannot work in that. The last one, and this is very important, subordination. Okay, notice the word. The root word of subordination is order. So you are sub-ordering yourself. So sub-order. It comes from the combined words of sub and order. So let me just give you an imagery for this, an analogy. Some of you are familiar with Blue Diamonds, yung mga jets, di ba? To put on air shows. Do you notice how they are usually formed pag nandun sila sa air when they do their maneuvers? They form themselves usually in an inverted V position or formation, no? Inverted V, parang triangle pero walang base. Okay. That's a formation that even the Navy uses also. When you have a flotilla or an armada of warships, for example, and when they sail together to a particular destination, you will notice that they usually are in a V formation or an inverted V formation. Diba? The geese, when they fly, diba? Ganun din. Okay. So what you have there is that each of those boats or ships or each of those jets up in the air are subordinated to the one before them. Okay, can you get this? It would be great if I have I can demonstrate it to you by doing you an illustration. But I'm just use your imagination here. So each of the jets or each of the ships are subordinated to each ship ahead of them. And then there is a head ship or a head jet na uuna. So, doon sila nakasubordinate, doon sa leader na yon. Now, the main ship, the head ship, is not necessarily the best ship or the most powerful ship in the Navy. But simply, the reason why it can be just a banca, it can just be a little boat that's up there heading it. The important thing is the commander, the commodore, the admiral is there in that particular ship. So everything else is subordinated to that. And what's the purpose? So that they can move together in unity and they don't crash into each other, they don't bump into each other. You know? Could you imagine up there in the air if these jets were not in sync or in subordination to each of those ships ahead of them? There will be accidents and it can be fatal and disastrous. So subordination is a structural means for unity. So I don't want to use the word submission, although that's very similar to this word, because submission is more of an attitude. But subordination is a structural term. So this means that the members in the small group have accepted the authority of the leader. Okay? all for the sake of unity and the good order of the group. Not because he's the best guy, he's the most intelligent guy, or the most popular, or the most in, uh, powerful guy. No, it's only because he is the leader, the designated leader. Um, this is true in the family, brothers and sisters. There's only one head in the family, correct? Who is the head? It's the husband, the father, and the wife is submitted or subordinated to the father. Not because the father is intelligent or powerful or rich or whatever, but he is the head. Imagine mo a family with two heads. Have you seen a body with two heads? A body with two heads is an abomination. It's an abnormal thing. It's an abnormality. So you only have one head. And the purpose of that is so that the whole group can move together as one. Okay? Let me give you another example in the family. So here's the family. You have the head, who is the husband. Then you have the mother, and then you have the children. So all the five people in that family would like to go on vacation. Okay. So then the father says, okay, so where shall we go for vacation? Then the wife says, let's go to Boracay. Then the eldest son says, let's go to Hong Kong. The second child goes, I'd like to go to Davao. Another one says, let's go to Paris or something. So everybody has their own like or desire or want. So now, if everybody tries to assert themselves in the family and say, no, it's like this, it's better ito, mas ganyan. So magdi-debate na yan, mamayang konti mag-away-away na. No? Dahil nag-away-away na, hindi matutuloy yung bakasyon kasi nobody agrees. Nobody subordinates himself kasi everybody wants to do his own thing. So, question, will there still be a vacation? Will there still be a family? Wala na. Diba? So, anong gagawin? So then the father steps in and decides, okay, let's go to Boracay. Not because Boracay is the best destination, not because Boracay is the cheapest destination or whatever. No, it's because that's where the father wants to go. And all of us go with him so that we can have a family vacation. Nagets nyo ba ito? So, yan ang ibig sabihin ng subordination dito. So in an action group, something similar is at work. Because we have to remember, as I said before, our relationships are a family-like relationship. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the action group dynamics. The dynamics of an action group. Let's talk first about frequency of meetings. For some, it's weekly. At least I know that in our men's and women's groups in Daligaya, we meet weekly. That's true also in Lingkod or even in CYA, in their action groups. I think in BCBP, at least I know that you meet every other week or twice weekly. That's okay. But sana not naman once a month lang. Kasi kung once a month, imagine mo, you only see each other 12 times a year. How can you build relationships that way? Diba? A barkada is formed when people hang out together frequently. Diba? So, ganun din yan. Okay? So, you meet regularly. Now, there can be possible exceptions for a number of reasons. So, in addition, however, the members are encouraged to spend informal times together outside of the regular action group meeting in order to build and foster relationships. So we don't just see each other in the formal action group meetings, but I can go out and say, hey, Joe, let's go watch a movie together, or let's go hunting or something. Spending time with one another. Next, the right time. Any time is right when all members can agree to get together. So if you want to meet at 2 o'clock in the morning and everybody agrees, well, that's still the right time for you. That's no problem. So, but it's something that you guys decide together. When you decide the right time for you to meet, Then some considerations would include travel time, distance, day and time of the day, that most people are free or convenient for members. I know in Cebu, traffic is now becoming an issue, just like in Manila. Many years ago, it has become an issue for what was a good time to get together, where, and gano'n. So, pag-isipan niyo maigi. It can be flexible when there are difficulties or special needs, but the important thing is it should be consistent and regular. So, hindi pa pwede yung okay, this week we'll meet on Tuesday. Next week, sa Saturday tayo, ha? Then the following week, okay lang ba gusto? Hindi. It has to be set. Why? We are all creatures of habit, and it's important for us to have those kinds of situations where so we can plan and we can do other things. Okay, the right place. Any venue that will work for the members would be good, but as long as they're accessible and allow the members to do what they need to do in the meeting. So the recommended venue is the homes of members. Why? Because there you can do many things. Rather than go in a restaurant or a coffee shop, baka di kayo makapagdasal doon. Or even worship the Lord together. But you can do so at home. But of course, if no home is available, then the next best thing, go to a restaurant or some place where you can still meet. Okay, what takes place in the action group meeting? Normally you start with a time of prayer and worship. Not very long, it's not a prayer meeting, but start with a time of prayer to consecrate the time to the Lord. And then you go into your main agenda, whatever it may be. It can be a personal sharing, can discuss some fellowship, it can be a teaching, etc. I'll go to that in a short while. But so you have your main agenda. Then after that, you take some time for practical concerns. Discuss, example, schedule natin next week sa breakfast, ganito tayo in charge ng ganito, yung practical concerns, announcements, even prayer intentions. We can pray for each other. Then we can have fellowship, konting merienda, etc. So, yeah. So yung usually that lasts you about an hour and a half for the whole thing. It can be longer depending on what you guys are free to do. Let me give you some recommendations for this, for what goes on in the prayer meeting. One recommendation is a format rotation, so that it's not always a Bible study or a fellowship together, but you variate. So like in my case, what I used to do in my action group, we meet every week, So apat na weeks in a month. So we used to meet every Thursday evening, I think. So what we do is we rotate. Example, the first Thursday, we will do a Bible sharing. Second Thursday, we will do a personal sharing. The third Thursday, we will study a chapter in a book that we are going through, or maybe listen to a teaching by tape or a podcast or something, and then have a discussion. And then the fourth Thursday, we will have fellowship. We'll go bowling together or something like that, eat out together. So, yun, pwede mong i-rotate yun. So there's variety, and may variation. So hindi naman masyadong boring ang inyong action group. So, ganon. Make the meeting evangelistic and life-giving. You can use the action group meeting to invite people to share life together, have an outing. If you meet on a Saturday, you can have a Lord's Day together, a Lord's Day celebration. One of the things we used to do fairly regularly before was projects. So, for example, one brother, we helped him move house or transfer to his dorm, to another dorm, another apartment. Mga ganyan. We did a painting job for the action group of sisters or something in their house. So mga ganong mga projects. Or maybe you wanted to go together to the Mother Teresa's, missionaries of charity and do some works of mercy. So, things like that. You can do that as an action group. Remember, as I said, the action group is also a base for evangelization, for apostolic action. Let me talk a little bit about personal sharing in the action group. This is an important part. So, personal life sharing is one of the more significant activities in an action group. Its main purpose is to let our brothers and sisters know what's going on with us in our personal life. Why is this important? So that we can enter more fully and share in a brother's joys, in a brother's concerns, his pains, his struggles, his victories, his faith, his fears, his hopes, and so on. So we can enter into his life. And in so doing, we are able to affirm him and support him and give him wisdom and strength and encouragement. So this is what we call ministry of presence, being with and being for the brother. So yun ang main reason for the personal sharing. Second thing is that sharing is personal. Pag sabing personal, it is not just simply intellectual discussion or discussion about politics or business discussions, although there's a place for that. If you decide, hey, let's talk about the current situation in our country, pwede rin naman na ganon. Pero ibig sabihin, hindi laging ganon ang pag-uusapan ninyo. Kasi kuminsan ang nangyayari, sosyalan lang, and nothing really happens. Neither is this a travel log or sharing about your travels and so on, or even the discussion of current events. This is not about others. It's about you, about yourself. If mention is made of another person in your sharing, make sure that he's not put in a bad light. Or maybe you have to get permission that, hey, I'm going to share this, my action group later tonight. Is it okay if I share about what you did with me and help me out, etc., etc. So yung mga ganon. Sharing is specific and concrete, not generalizations, and it should be faith building. May inspire naman yung mga tao. So you might be going through a difficult situation. So the way you would share it would be something like, brothers and sisters, it's been very challenging for me the past week because of this, and that. But the Lord has been very helpful. He has given me wisdom and He has given me strength to go through this. So you don't only share about the problem, you share also about the victory that the Lord has given you. That brings me to the next point. It's very important to avoid a problem-oriented approach in your personal sharing. I mean, of course, you can share your problems and concerns, but imagine nito, brothers and sisters, 5 kayo sa action group. Lahat ng 5 yan, pag pumupunta sa action group meeting, puro problema ang sinishare. Kung ikaw yung member doon, hindi ba tatamarin kang pumunta? Kasi may problema ka na nga sa bahay mo, may problema ka nga sa business mo, sa trabaho mo, pagdating mo sa action group, problema pa maririnig mo. Di ba? So, avoid that problem-oriented approach in your sharing. Although, it's also important that you can share your concerns. But if week in and week out, that's what you share, then, it's not a very good and upbuilding thing to do. When you start dumping your problems into the group, doon na hingahan mo, doon na-dump lahat yung sama ng loob mo. Nakaka-nega. Maging negative ka, sama din ang loob mo, etc. Another thing, brothers and sisters, is that the sharing is not a reporting to the leader. Kasi kadalasan, ang nangyayari sa isang action group meeting, you share about your life, but you're sharing it to the leader. And then the rest of the people are just, listening. No, you are not reporting. This is not a reporting thing, but it is directed to everybody in the group. So the people can actually share in your life. So this is not just a one-to-one reporting being done in a communal context. Okay, so what do we share, therefore, in the action group? A lot of things, no? What is God doing and or saying in your life? In your prayer time, are you receiving any prophetic sense from the Lord? Share about your significant blessings and victories, and share about your concerns. Share about the fruit of your prayer time, your meditation, your scripture reading, your scripture study, things that you are learning and experiencing that help you grow in the Christian life. So see, as you can see, there's so many things you can share in the group. Okay, let's move on now to the Bible sharing and other action group activities. When I saw your manual in the BCBP, the action group meeting is largely limited to Bible studying or Bible sharing. That's okay, but I think it's good also to variate. So, for example, if you're meeting 4 times a week or a month rather, then one of them can be a Bible sharing time. Another would be personal sharing, as I said earlier. Another would be a fellowship and so on. So may variety kayo. So in terms of Bible sharing, you can use a variety of what we call Bible sharing methods as your guide. And I think your manual gives you some recommendations there about what kind of Bible sharing method you can use. You can use the Lectio Divina, which is a very simple way of studying scriptures. You can use a 7-step method of Bible sharing. There's another one called the Stop, Look, Listen method. But I think your BCB manual has some recommendations also in this regard. So you're piliin ninyo yung what you think would be helpful, also interesting, and so on. Okay, some other recommended activities. For example, when you're thinking of having a fellowship, you can have separate men's and women's activities. The women can have cooking lessons. The brothers can have carpentry projects or sports. You can bike together or something. You can have outing or dining together, games even. So you can do that for fellowship. Of course, isipin nyo kung ano yung magiging maganda para sa buong grupo, meaning that a lot of that people in the group can actually participate in. So imagine niyo to. Let's say there are 5 couples and 4 of the couples are medyo senior citizens na lahat. So to go biking or to do a running, for example, activity, medyo mahirapan na, di ba? So, yon. Isipin lang natin kung ano yung helpful for everybody else to participate. Doon naman sa mga if you want, one of the meetings would be a teaching or a discussion of some Christian topic. You can go through a Bible, you can go through a book together. Maraming mga Christian books. For example, during ngayon, Lent, you can get a Lenten, topic and discuss, different topics or different areas of what the cross of Jesus meant, etc. Then discuss your learnings together. You can listen to Christian podcasts or listen to yung mga parang TED Talks, yung mga ganyan, yung mga topics na ganyan. So you can even invite someone to give a teaching on a topic of your choice. So say, Francis, can you give us a teaching on Christian marriage or something like that? So you can do that. Invite sources. You have plenty of resources. Or you have a friend who is a priest and you can invite him for yung mga ganon. So yun. So marami kang pwedeng gawin in the action group. Okay, let me conclude. Let me say something about what the action group is not. Okay. First of all, the action group is not a social club formed simply for social enjoyment or fun. Although that's also part. It's one of those elements in the action group. Okay. Pero hindi lang ito sosyalan lang. Otherwise, it could just be like a joy luck club or something like a group together formed because of your interest in computers, mga ganyan. It is not a counseling center for those with problems and concerns. Otherwise, you'll just become like Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that. It is not a training center for self-improvement techniques or effectiveness in some kind of service. Just like being part of a Toastmasters club. So you learn something there. So what brings you together is that. It is not a forum for political discussions or social advocacies. Otherwise, it will become a special interest group. I know of a group, they call themselves the Harley Davidson Owners Group or HUG. So that's what they do. They just talk about their Harley Davidsons. So yun ang support group nila. Mahilig silang rumonda ng antipolo in their Harley Davidson, something like that. That brings them together. So it's not a place to extend network of contacts or doing business or fundraising or selling like you would. Hindi naman ito parang mga pyramid groups, no? Or maybe a Tupperware club or something like that. In fact, brothers and sisters, you have to be careful about this, no? A lot of people join, I know this for a fact, a lot of people join BCBP because they see these are all businessmen. I can do business with these people. Or maybe I can fundraise from them. So, no, the action group is not for that purpose. So what is it? What is the action group? What the action group is? The action group, brothers and sisters, is a purposive group, meaning it is a reason for being together. It's a practical system and setting for brotherly love and fraternal care and formation in the BCBP way of life. That is the main goal for the action group. It is a means for integrating well into the life of the BCBP community. So you are connected to the small group so that you can very well connect with the bigger group. You have a place. It's a place where healing can take place. Just being in a community is a very healing experience. Not that you have to always pray for healing, no, but just being together with brothers and sisters who support you, affirm you, serve you, love you, that's very healing. It's a place to receive support, wisdom, correction, encouragement, those kinds of things. So that is what the action group is. In other words, the BCBP action group is where loving and caring for one another as brothers and sisters can concretely happen and take place. If all goes well, if that action group goes well, then the ultimate goal of the action group as a means of growing in the Christian life would have been achieved. Brothers and sisters, this is why the BCBP community is only as strong as its weakest action group. If the action group works well as intended, then you have a strong BCBP community. Okay, I'll end there, and we have time for open forum. And then after that, we will break out into small groups, and we have some discussion starters prepared for you. Okay, was this helpful?
Brother Francis, once again, thank you so much. Very, very helpful. And now we know where the word group.
Trivia lang yun, Yan.
Brothers and sisters, now we know where the words action group, that's so much ingrained in BCBP action group, and it came from you. So, wow, we're so honored. Do we have any questions? You can type your questions in the chat box. I have a question, Brother Francis. Sometimes, of course, you form your best friends from the action group, and you are able to bond so much. And maybe after a year, you don't want to leave your action group anymore. And when you're asked to transfer to another action group, there's a lot of resistance. But I know that it's a way to be able to grow by joining other action groups, but maybe you can comment on that. Sometimes the resistance to leave your old action group and move to a new one.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a very normal and human experience, especially when you have established and invested in your personal relationships. And to move out of that can be painful sometimes, especially if there has been some kind of emotional dependency among the members. But that's exactly what we should avoid, so that we can actually grow in our relationship with other brothers and sisters. The issue there is how do we deal with the separation? Ito tawag naming sepangs, separation anxiety. No? So as I said, normal yon, but it's also normal that after a while it will be gone, the separation anxiety. And so it's not also good naman. Okay, so there are pastoral reasons why groups are reconfigured. So may mga pastoral reasons yun, no? And the leaders can explain what the reasons are. But it's not good to have an action group that stays for a long, long time, such that they become a clique. Okay? That's not a good thing kasi it can implode on itself. So again, kaya ka may action group para yun ang base mo for serving and being open. Hindi rin maganda na every year nagpapalitan. Kasi you cannot also grow in relationships, no? Kasi sabi nga natin, ang tawag dito, a rolling stone gathers no moss. So you cannot grow. So yun. So there must be good reasons for the reshuffling or for the reconfiguring of action groups. We don't just do this arbitrarily. Secondly, we also need to talk with people who are affected and say we're planning to do this. Give them time to adjust, for example. So those are kinds of things that are important. No? It also works differently between men and women. Women usually have more difficult time switching groups. They're more invested personally. Men, medyo mas okay, mas madali. So ako, pag nagkaroon ng, I remember during my time as director for Lingkod, when we would have changes in the configuration, if it's gonna affect the sisters, it takes a little bit of parang stages. I go through different stages before the thing happens. So if there's going to be a reconfiguration that's going to take place for good pastoral reasons, then I will do it this way. Say 6 months before that happens, I already start talking about it. So then the people hear about it. So it's there in their mind. So nakakondition sila. Then afterwards, we'll talk more about it and say, hey, sometime later we will have a reconfiguration going on, but we have there are no definite plans yet. Parang ganyan. Pero nakikita na clear na papunta doon. So that by the time that that there's going to be a reconfiguration already, mas sanay na sila. So yun. But it should not be a reason na people move because I don't like this action group, I'd like to move to another group. That's not a very good reason. So you bloom where you're planted. Now, unless there's some real big difficulty or there's some real good pastoral reason why you should move out, then you can. But again, just because it's not your preference, it's not that would not be a good thing as a basis for changing action groups.
Okay, so I think we have two final questions, Brother Francis.
Okay.
First is from our chapter head. How do you develop members in the action group to become action group leaders?
Okay. Well, one of the first things I do is have the members do some service. Small service at the beginning. small responsibilities. Ganyan. To take care of something, etc. Parang ganyan. That's how I usually begin. Get the brother or the sister, get involved, assign them some service that they can handle. But don't just assign them the service, help them with it. So, tuturuan mo talaga sila. You correct them if you need to. Ganyan. So then you gradually increase the responsibility, so to speak. Usually what I do pag gano'n, yung dahan-dahan. So first, maybe later on, I'll ask them to join, to start becoming an assistant discussion group leader in a CLP or something like that. Then a discussion leader that he can take with him to become his action group later on. Parang ganyan. So dahan-dahan, pwedeng ganyan. Again, there should be also what I call yung formal teaching or formal training. So maybe you should have, maybe I'm sure you have action group leaders training and things like that.
Okay, Brother Francis, we'll go now to our last question. I'd like to combine the questions of Connie, Simafranca, and Jordan.
Okay.
What would be a good composition of the action group? Would it be best to group them together according to age, or better that they not be more or less the same ages? Would it be best that they, in terms of the address, that they don't live too far from each other? Of course, now that's not applicable, but when things go back to normal, better that they're not too far away from each other and maybe of similar industries.
Yeah, there's really no, you might say, hard fast rule about these kinds of things. A good factor for this, or a good consideration, has to do with who the people are. If you get to know them, so what will work best for them. It can be, sometimes it's good to have the more heterogeneous, meaning different backgrounds and so on, or sometimes it can be more homogeneous, same interests, etc. So it depends. Age-wise, okay din. Pero wag naman sana yung masyadong malalaki yung agwat ng age. I remember one time, at least in Ligaya, we had a men's and women's group. Yung 4 of the couples were on their senior years. And then all of a sudden, they put in a newly married couple. So one time, nag-complain sa akin yung newly married couple, a young couple. So, alam mo, Francis, lahat ng pinag-uusapan namin, puro gamot, at saka funeral plans, yung mga ganyan. Hindi sila makarelate. So just be conscious about those kinds of things. My rule of thumb is what will work for them, then it works. So it's not like there's any hard fast rule about which one would be used. I saw a question there about planning your groups. Maybe we can have another session on pastoral planning, but that's a little bit different. It's about this is part of pastoral care, but that should really be more for pastoral leaders or action group leaders to be discussing. But that's a good question.
Brother Francis, is that related to making a personal growth plan? That's what you mean, that maybe is best for another talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are many ways of doing it, but kasi personal growth plan is you're doing it personally. But it's also good for the pastoral leader, the action group leader, to have some idea of how he wants to bring the person to a particular goal or something. So pastoral planning yon. And yung pastoral plan niya, at saka yung growth plan ng brother, dapat they should jive. Because you cannot impose your pastoral plan on somebody who doesn't want to do it. So it has to be acceptable to the brother also.
Okay, so once again, Brother Francis Iturralde, in behalf of BCBP Cebu North, we'd like to thank you with a big round of applause
Thank you.
and sharing.
Thank you, brothers and sisters.